If you've been feeling more pressure than usual in your leadership, before you blame yourself or your staff or the volunteer team, I would love for you to consider something else to blame. It may not be you at all. It might be your ministry model. Here's our topic for today. What do you do when the model that once worked now doesn't? Let's dig into that. Every ministry model, right, no matter how beautiful, thoughtful, or strategic, and it was built for a moment in time. And that moment is shaped by what's happening in your community, in culture, in your church, and, listen, honestly, in you as a leader. But moments change, right? Communities, they shift demographically, socioeconomically. Your people grow older or younger. New pressures surface. Expectations evolve. And the model that once propelled your church forward begins to work against you. And of course, right, most pastors begin feeling the pressure long before they realize the cause. Here are some of the symptoms, right? Maybe you're seeing some of these. Discipleship feels slower. Your team kind of looks tired. Volunteers burn out sooner than they used to. Systems that used to work now feel kind of clunky. Momentum is very much stalling. You're working harder, but it just seems like you're seeing or feeling less fruit from all the work. And so you chalk it up to effort, right? But what if it's architecture that's the problem? It's almost never an effort problem. It's almost always a model problem. There are three questions that bring immediate clarity to this conversation. I've used these questions with, dozens, maybe hundreds of churches. And every time they reveal exactly where the model is drifting. Let me just go through these three questions. If you want to write them down or come back to this later, I think it's great questions for you to consider by yourself, maybe with a lead team or your elder board or core volunteers, just whatever you have as a leadership circle. Like, write these three questions down and have an honest conversation about it. So here's the first question. How effective or ineffective is your current model? Like, how effective or ineffective is your model? And I don't mean from the stage, not from attendance numbers only, although that is important, but from real discipleship progress. Is your model helping people become more like Jesus? Is your model fulfilling your mission? That's a really great question to help you answer it. And if it's not, you got to diagnose why, not who. It's not a who problem. It's a why problem. So your model, your ministry model, is designed for one reason, your mission. So how effective or how ineffectively is your current approach, your model, moving your mission forward? Ask that question honestly. All right, number two, how old is your model? Now, this one creates some uncomfortable laughter when I work with churches, right? Because we typically don't ask that question and we don't even think about the age of the model. Because here's the reality, though, after we kind of peel back some of the tweaks that we've made and some kind of updates, we discover often that the model is decades old. Some churches, think about this. Some churches are running a 1980s model structure in a 2025 community. That mismatch creates some massive, massive pressure. Think about all the things that have changed, the moment that has changed, how significantly the moment has changed from the time the model that you're currently working off of was created versus the moment you're in right now. It's pretty significant. Third question, last one. How much has your culture changed since the model was built? All right, this is a big one, right? Don't think time here. Think context. All right, our second question is about time. This one is more about context. Again, what has happened in the last 5 years or 6 years isn't just about years. It's about context. We're all so tired of even hearing the word pandemic, and it's been 5 years now. I don't want to talk about it, right? But think about it just for a second, right? Take it for instance. It wasn't a pause. It was a paradigm shift. Everything changed overnight. But many churches, right, tried to go back to just business as usual when the context wasn't usual at all anymore. And I don't mean in the, few months and, 6 months after, where a lot of us were still not meeting, or we were meeting, but meeting under different context, outdoors, we were spreading out more. I mean, all this crazy things that we had to do. And by the way, we probably should have done some of those because we just didn't know any better. But like, the culture didn't just pause and go back to normal. I mean, today, right, towards the end of 2025, the paradigm has shifted dramatically. Like, and when culture changes and your model doesn't, that is a pressure cooker, and it kind of rises, right, every single time. So letting go of an outdated model, right, especially a one that was dynamic in the past, it is quite the leadership challenge. I mean, think about it. Like, if you are leading right now out of a ministry model that was very successful, however you define success in the past, and now it's not working as well, letting go of that to hold on to something new, something different, oh man, that's really challenging. And even worse if you founded that model. But here's what as I've thought about it, I mean, I have come across a question that might help you let go. Like, instead of asking, what should we keep from the old model? What if we asked, what should we learn from it? Let's assume that you ask those first three questions and you come to the conclusion, oh shoot, our community, our culture, our church makeup, the socioeconomics, everything about our community is different. The way what people are looking for is different. Not the truth is different, but how they want to hear it, how they want to be engaged with it, what engages them. For instance, people are more hungry for truth today than they were 10 years ago, 15, 20, 30 years ago. How does that shift, what we're doing? So ask those three questions. I mean, if you recognize that your model was built before, the internet, think about how much has changed, right? If you think about the context of your community and how much has changed since that model was introduced, again, there's a lot of stuff to learn from that. And our temptation might be, if we honestly answer those three questions, to just bail on the model and try to mimic something from somebody else or do something completely different. And maybe that's what you should do at some point in time. But before you just proverbially throw the baby out with the bathwater, pause and ask, what should we learn from what we were doing? What should we learn from the old model? Because listen, we can take things from the old model, and we can take some of those things with us into our new plan. So rather than taking old patterns, we just take solid and proven principles. Let me give you an example, and this is one that's very kind of near and dear to me. Take the seeker-sensitive movement. This started a long time ago, right? Maybe we could, give Bill Hybels and Willow the credit for a lot of this, and they deserve credit for this. It was a reaction to a different model, and reactions typically go a little extreme the other way. We get out of balance on the other side, but the idea of seeker-sensitive wasn't a bad idea. Now, it certainly has brought some unintended consequences, right? But by itself, at least 40, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, it wasn't the worst idea. It was pretty good. And by the way, God used it for extraordinary good. I mean, millions of people came to faith, but it also left a discipleship gap, right? Because the model was built to reach more than it was built to mature. That is a learning. That's a learning. You can honor the evangelistic heart of that approach while designing a model that also grows people into spiritual maturity. So you don't just throw out being, and I don't even want to use the word seeker sensitive. At North Point, we were more seeker comprehensible. That may even sound like a verbiage, thing, and it means a lot. Like, we would still talk about really hard things. In fact, the smaller the circle, the more challenging the conversations often were. And again, you may not appreciate that model, or you may not believe that that is a good way to do it. And I understand those arguments. I completely do. And by the way, I believe in some of those things now. However, you don't throw all of it out, because a lot of it has worked extremely well, and God has used a lot of it. In fact, some of the churches that are the most dynamic today have brought in the beneficial parts of a outward-facing church and combined it with the power of spiritual growth and maturity. So they haven't thrown one out and gone to the other extreme. I mean, you can carry forward strengths from an old model while intentionally solving the gaps. That's really what intentional leaders do, right? But reactive leaders don't. I mean, if here's the reality, and maybe we should just say this out loud, right? I'll say it out loud, but maybe you should too. All models eventually fail. All models eventually fail. It doesn't matter how good your church model is today, eventually it is going to fail because they all do, because moments change. And so the goal isn't to panic, it's just to prepare for that. You don't drift into a better model. You design one. When you begin to sense that what was working in the past is no longer working as well today, that's a data point. And you shouldn't panic, but it should create a red flag. And you should begin designing something that could be better. So as you look towards 2026, I mean, this is a really unique moment for your church. You can keep kind of tweaking yesterday's system, or you can intentionally design something better for tomorrow. Your church doesn't need more heroic effort, right? You don't need to work harder, especially inside of an outdated structure. What you really need as a leader is to be willing to step back, see clearly, and design something with purpose. Again, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't jettison things that are good just because they're part of an old model, but update them and add to them to create a better new model that meets today's moment. And do it knowing it's not going to last forever. So this week, just take one step in that direction. Maybe it's just asking those 3 questions that we talked about up front. Maybe it's looking at your current model and deciding what is good in it that we need to take into tomorrow's model. And there's so many ways you can go with this. My prayer for you is that you will intentionally think about where your church is today and intentionally evaluate what could make it dynamic next year.